Can you hear me okay? Yeah, all right. Cool. So I noticed that the Pasadena Audubon has a wonderful Instagram page, and I thank you for posting some of my videos on your story. And if anyone here has an Instagram account or a Facebook account, please follow Friends of Condors. We are a nonprofit. We support the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, National Wildlife Refuges, where the condor lives. Hopper Mountain is in Fillmore. Bitter Creek is near Carrizo Plains National Monument. So I am very, very pleased to be here today to talk to you about my favorite bird, the California Condor. A little bit about my background. I have been a Fish and Wildlife Service volunteer since 2008. My husband and I have had the opportunities to nest monitor. We've hiked into Hopper Mountain and Bitter Creek with a spotting scope and monitored nests, the chick stage and the egg stage, to make sure that the parent birds were coming to the nest, and when the chick was hatched, that it was healthy and that it was being fed. Unfortunately, last year we had 11 nests and 10 of them failed. So we're hoping to start the nest monitoring program again with more volunteers. And one of our projects that the Friends of Condors purchased this year were 6 cameras for nests. So when the biologists go into the nest, they have to rappel into the caves. They put up cameras and then they can remotely monitor them. We're trying to figure out why so many nests failed. So let me see if I can get this to work. All right, I'm just going to go back to the old-fashioned. Maybe it needs to load a driver or something. Okay. There you go. So these are the partners of the California Condor Recovery Program. And without them, the program wouldn't work. We have 5 breeding programs. We have 6 release sites, zoos, and foundations that support the California Condor. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of the California Condor, and then talk to you about the Condor Recovery Program itself. So 40,000 years ago, there were condors all over North America. The historical range 10,000 years ago was across in North America, and then it moved to the West Coast. During Lewis and Clark's expeditions, they noted seeing California condors in Oregon and Washington. In the 1900s, the range, the habitat changed. Human intervention, hunting, egg collecting, collecting feathers, cause a more endangered species to fail. And in 1987, the condors were extinct in the wild. In 1982, there were 22 alive. In 1987, on Easter Sunday, the last one was captured and put into the breeding program at the LA Zoo. In 1992, the first release of a captive bred condor happened. In 2023, we now have California condors flying free over Baja, Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and of course, California. California condors, New World vulture, Genopchips californianus. They weigh between 19 and 25 pounds, good sized turkey. They have a 9.5-foot wingspan, the largest land bird in North America because the brown pelican has the same. They only eat carrion. They nest in cave and in tree hollows. The lifespan of a California condor can be up to 60 years. The oldest bird we have right now is in the LA Zoo. It's Topa Topa. He's stud book number 1. He's 57 years old. Okay. They don't reach sexual maturity until 5 or 6 years, and they generally lay 1 egg every 2 years. That's because they incubate the egg for 2 months. The chick, it takes 6 months to fledge, and then it hangs out. You know, those teenagers, you can't get them out of the house. They stay for another 6 months or more. So they generally lay 1 egg every 2 years. This is a picture of a California condor foot so that you can see it doesn't have a talon like an eagle. They can't come by and grab a dog or something. They have turkey or chicken feet. They don't use their feet to grab any food. They're carrion eaters. They will use the foot to hold something down or maybe drag it away from a turkey vulture. So I'm going to talk to you about the California Condor Recovery Plan. It was established in 1975 when they realized that the dwindling numbers of California condors. The first tenet is to establish a captive breeding program, which they did in 1982. It first started in the LA Zoo, and now we have 5 areas where they breed California condors. The second tenet is to reintroduce California condors to the wild, which they started in 1992. Third is to minimize mortality factors in the natural environment, and we'll talk more about that today. The fourth is to maintain habitat, hence the Condor Sanctuary in the Sespe, the Bitter Creek and Hopper Mountain National Wildlife Refuges. And the fifth is to implement condor information and education programs like tonight. So in 1988, excuse me, the first pair of wild-trap birds produced an egg. This is in the LA Zoo. The captive rearing program tried different experiments to increase the species as much as they could. So they would take the first egg that was laid by the captive hare and they'd put it into an incubator. And then the second one, that they would lay another egg and that they would raise the second egg. And the first one was raised by a puppet. And if anyone had a chance to look at the table in the back, we have a puppet that came from the LA Zoo. It actually had a little meat on it when we first got it. We had to clean it up. The reason they did this was, of course, they don't want them to imprint on human beings. Now what they do is they still may double clutch, but they may let the male raise a chick and the female raise a chick, or the parents will raise 2 chicks. And they can do this, which is not what they normally do in the wild, but they can do this in the zoo because they are given food. In the wild, they actually have to switch out. The male will go and get food while the female is with the chick, and 2-3 days later, it'll come back and they'll switch out. It has happened in the past where we've had one of the birds die and the single one has raised successfully a chick by itself. Okay, these are the areas where we do release the birds to the wild. The first release site was in Hopper Mountain, and it's now been moved to Bitter Creek. The second release site is supported by the Peregrine Fund in Arizona in the Grand Canyon. Ventana Wildlife Society has a release site, followed by the Chapultepec Zoo in Baja, Mexico. And you're thinking, why are there so many different sites? Well, this is one of the tenets of the Condor Recovery Program. We don't want all our eggs in one basket, okay? We want to have separate flocks. So if something happens, like what's going on in Arizona now, I'm going to get sad. Okay, the avian flu has killed 20 birds in Arizona. So we have separate flocks so that we can try to save them, keep them isolated from each other in case something like this happens. Pinnacle National Park and the Yurok tribe in 2022, they trained for 5 years to be a release site. The California Condor is important in their indigenous culture, and they have released 8 birds. Last year, my husband just read that 4 of them were recaptured so they could check on them to make sure, or 8 of them were all recaptured, checked on them to make sure they didn't have any signs of avian flu, and then 4 of them have been released. So to check, well, where we release them, this is a flight pen in Bitter Creek. This is a example of juveniles that are released usually from the captive breeding programs aged between 1.5 to 2 years old. And you'll notice that one is not like the others. The pink head, that's an adult. It's a mentor bird helping the other ones get accustomed. This is an interesting slide. So I don't know if you can see, I live in Santa Paula. But this is a bird that's flew all the way around in one day. This is a female. She was 4 years, she's now 4 years old, and she was hatched from Los Angeles Zoo. So she was a captive bred bird and was released. So they do fly different areas than the sanctuaries, you know, and I saw the birds out in your nature center here, the exhibit. So they may come back here too, because birds came to my house 3 months ago. You never know when you're going to see one. The third tenet is to minimize mortality. This is a pie chart of the different causes of the death of California condors over a 40-year period, sorry. The leading cause, of course, is lead poisoning. A law has been passed, AB 711. It was implemented fully 3 years ago, which asks hunters not to use lead bullets. Lead bullets fragment. There is a sample out on the table over there that shows you copper bullets just mushroom, lead bullets fragment. Any scavenging animal, eagles, hawks, coyotes, turkey vultures, condors can die of lead poisoning when they eat carrion that has been killed with a lead bullet. Other major causes of death, unfortunately, the Dolan fire in 2020 killed 12 birds in the central flock in California. There have been birds predated by mountain lions, black bears, bobcats. Ravens will enter nests and eat eggs. Just nature doing its thing, right? The avian flu, we talked a little bit about. It has been seen in Arizona. It has not yet been seen in our condor flocks in Mexico or California. This is an example of fragmented lead. So you can see easily if a hunter shoots a deer and it gets away, that little pieces of lead are all through the animal. This is from a Ventana Wildlife Society presentation a month ago. The avian flu has been seen in California. And the scariest thing is the one at the top. It's been found in a turkey vulture. So it's the same strain probably from Arizona. If it can affect turkey vultures, it can affect California condors. These are the birds that they've tested and proven that in Monterey County have had avian flu. This is another photo of the flight pen. And besides putting birds there to release them, we also try to monitor their health. And Ventana is doing this as well as the Yurok tribe in California, where we capture birds usually once or twice a year to check on their health. If they've lost a transmitter, all our birds have GPS and radio telemetry units so that we can monitor them because they are an endangered species. We want to know where they are. If we capture them in this nest, in this in this pen, there's a trap door, and we'll put food out for them. They'll come in, and then the trap door will come down, and our interns, our biologists will capture the birds carefully because those beaks are really sharp. And they'll check their feathers, they'll check their tags, they'll check their telemetry units, their GPS. They'll make sure that they're healthy. In the past, if they looked sick, they would take a blood sample to see if they had lead poisoning. They are now there are sometimes birds that do not have tags, that they're quote stealth birds. Maybe there was a nest that we didn't know about, even though we're tracking them with GPS units. Then the mysterious birth happens, and we find a bird that has no tag. It happens in the Grand Canyon all the time because they can't enter those nests. They're just too difficult to get to. So they'll capture them. They'll do blood work to find the genetics to determine if they're a male or female, because there's no way to tell by looking at them that the males and females look the same. Though Mike Clark, who's a zookeeper at LA Zoo, said he can tell by looking at their eyes. And I just think he's been around condors too long. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the life cycle of a condor. It's 60 days. It's actually 57 days is the exact. 6 months to fledge. These are birds from the Coford nest. They rappel into those nests to check on the birds. They used to enter 30, 60, 90, 120 days. But like all government programs, things change. There's less money, less staffing, less budget. So now they do a 120-day entry. And that's when our chick gets its wing tag and it gets a blood sample to determine if it's a male or female. And there used to be problems with microtrash. It's less and less now. I cannot say why. Biologists believe that the birds are feeding, the adults are feeding microtrash to chicks because this little egg and the chick in 6 months grows to a full-size 9.5-foot wingspan. So maybe they think microtrash is bone. Maybe they are feeding these things, trying to help them get calcium. But if they are fed too much microtrash, their crop is full, they can't eat any more food, they can starve. So one of the reasons we used to nest monitor was to make sure the chick was healthy. And if it wasn't healthy, what's happened in the past is they would enter the nest, take the chick out, it would helicoptered to LA Zoo, surgery to take the microtrash out. The next day, the chick would come back to the nest. But to keep the parent bird out of the nest so it wouldn't go away, the biologists would stay there overnight. And I remember Molly staying in that nest in the cave all night long, keeping the adult bird out so that it would come back the next day and take care of the chick when it was returned. That's dedication, right? Okay, maintaining condor habitat. We talked about the wildlife refuges, but they go everywhere. I mean, they just don't stay on the, whoops. They just don't stay on the refuges. This is, you could, all these dots are the GPS units where the birds congregate. And you can see where the birds go from the southern Hopper Mountain up to Bitter Creek. Our flock actually interacts with the central flock, which is in Big Sur, Monterey area. We don't have a Romeo and Juliet yet. I keep hoping that that happens, but it hasn't. But they do go up so that some birds like surf and turf. So, you know, they'll have a cow in SoCal and then they'll go up for a whale in Big Sur. Okay, this is a really interesting graph, and it shows the different, I want to go up there and point, but I can't. Okay, the red is the declining historic population. And then you can see when there were no more birds out in the wild, when the red totally decreases. And then the blue stripes are the birds that were in the captive population. I'm sorry, we're still out in the wild. Yeah. This part here. So between 1982 and 87, there were a few birds that were still out in the wild. The purple ones are the ones that are in the captive population. And then the blue ones are the released ones. But the hopeful part is the orange. Those are the ones that were born in the wild. Okay, this is the most recent condor population from December of 2022. At that time, we had 561 birds. Normally, I would say there are more birds in the wild now. But because we've had 20 deaths, we don't have enough births to counter that. I would say during the season, we have 11 suspected nests right now in SoCal. 4 have been confirmed with eggs or a chick. So it's possible that we have 20 birds that have been born in the breeding programs and in the wild nests that will counteract those. And I hope we don't have any more deaths because of avian flu. But our total population is around 560. I'm sure it's not going to be 600 this year. You can see the Arizona flock has 116, Baja has 40, and in SoCal, in California, we have 3 flocks now, the SoCal one in our area, the central flock, and then the Yurok tribe has 8 in Northern California. So the goal of the California Condor Recovery Plan is to establish 2 geographically distinct self-sustaining populations, each with 150 birds in the wild and at least 15 breeding pairs. We have that now if we count all the birds in California, but we don't have enough in Arizona. We don't have enough in Mexico. So we are still dependent on the captive breeding programs. So how can you help? Everybody always wants to know. I always tell, is anybody here working with the young birders from Pasadena, Audubon? They Yes? Okay. So they gave us a condor plush that they made into like an operation game and they put micro trash inside it to teach kids about micro trash. And it's the coolest thing. Whenever I do outreach at an event, kids love to play this game. And it teaches them about, what's good food for a condor, what's bad, they shouldn't be picking up these little pieces of glass and so micro trash is bad. Anybody that's in the wild hiking on a trail, help out wildlife and pick up whatever trash you see. Never feed or approach a condor. When they first were released, there were so many silly stories of people feeding them hot dogs. They're wildlife. You just like in Yellowstone, you don't go near a bison. You don't go near a condor. And you can report a sighting if you think you've seen a condor. Hopper Mountain at Fish and Wildlife, that's Hopper Mountain at fws.gov is the place that you can report a sighting. It is on our website. If you look at friendsofcondors.org, if you see a condor, if you can get a photo, if you can get its tag number, and if it looks like it's not healthy, please report it. Of course, if you're a hunter, please use non-lead. It is the law now in California. And you can always volunteer. Our friends group are always looking for helpful volunteers. And so some of the things that we do, we assist with the Fish and Wildlife Service refuge projects and work days. It's so much fun to go to a refuge and build a bird blind, take down old fences, and maybe see a California condor in the wild. We monitor the nests. My husband and I have just enjoyed doing this since 2008, to hike on a trail with a spotting scope. Oh yeah. And then 2 miles, 3 miles later, you get to a beautiful area and you can watch a little baby condor jumping around. It's so neat. We're always looking for people that have skills like grant writing proposals, outreach at our educational booths. We can always have help with people. We set up booths with information like we have on the table in the back and talk to people about the California condor and give them the history of the condor and the environmental ways that we can help. We also, if you want to see a condor in the wild, one of the best places to go in this local area is the Bitter Creek National Wildlife Refuge. We have a kiosk between June and October, the first and third Saturdays, where we set up a booth, and we have spotting scopes and binoculars. And because there are nests there, and there's a flight pen there where we release birds. Condors are very curious and they fly around, and we often see them along the road just outside the Bitter Creek Refuge. We also do tours. Our refuges, because it is an endangered species, are closed to the public unless you are on a guided tour. If there is a sign-up sheet in the back, if you want to be on our mailing list, if you want to do a tour, please sign up on that sheet. And then we do presentations like this. So, any questions? This is Dolly, by the way. She is an ambassador bird. She's adorable. Unfortunately, she had a broken wing and she cannot be released. And she follows Mike Clark around like a puppy dog. Mike Clark is the zookeeper at the LA Zoo, who says he can tell the difference between a male and a female bird.
I'm going to help them out, so we'll go ahead and microphone it there. I'm curious, first of all, are the condors in the wild, are they being fed by the Fish and Wildlife Service or anyone else, or are they totally on their own device?
That's a good question. They are normally fed when we are trying to capture the birds in June and October. So that in the flight pen, they'll put out a rabbit or a calf, stillborn calf. Also during the nesting period, which just started, it's usually between April and October when they fledge, they may put out some additional food to assist the nesting pairs in getting food.
What's that, just like dropping a dead cow somewhere out in the field?
Yeah, exactly. We get stillborn calves from local farmers. They get rabbits. Yeah.
I want to ask another. That picture you had of the birds in the pen, so it sounds like you can't just take a captive raised condor and just let it go. They have to like be taught stuff by an adult.
Yes. So mentor birds help. Condors are very social, just like turkey vultures. I mean, you barely see one turkey vulture. You usually see a bunch of them flying around together. The mentor birds help them get acclimated. Also, there are certain things like they used to be released and they would land on electric poles and have problems with electricity. So inside the flight pen, they will have a electric pole, and if they land on it, they'll get a slight shock. So there's certain things that they're being trained not to do while they're in the flight pen.
We say, yeah, I wanted that. Oh, it's you repeat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask about, I read a story about the condor, and it's kind of a bleed prognosis where the lead poisoning is pervasively an issue that they didn't ever see with populations becoming really self-sustaining. And I wanted to know if you've seen a decline in lead poisoning since.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So the question is that there have been reports of a lot of lead poisoning in California condors and projections that they'll never be self-sustaining because of the lead poisoning. And has it decreased? So in Arizona, I can't say it has so much because they haven't passed a law to stop hunting with non-lead, though they have done certain things in Arizona where they've had lotteries and they've asked people to bring carcasses in. And if they do, they get a raffle ticket, and, you know, Cabela's and other hunting organizations or stores will, and it's like a raffle, and they can win things if they bring a carcass and they get a raffle ticket. So that's brought a lot of hunters in Arizona to learn about using non-lead. In California, it's a law. Originally, hunters didn't want to use it because non-lead bullets are more expensive than lead bullets. And, you know, when you buy a lead bullet, you just don't buy one, you buy packages. So once the law started being implemented, people are like, well, I'm going to use all my bullets first, you know. But now there's more education, there's more outreach, there's more hunters who have kind of gone the way like of duck hunters. I mean, they don't use lead because they know that the ducks would eat lead and they could die. So they want to hunt ducks, so they don't use lead pellets anymore. A lot of hunters in California, when they come up to an outreach booth, tell me they're not using lead bullets anymore. They use non-lead. They sometimes the performance is just as good. Sometimes they need a different weight, but and the price is coming down. So many people are telling me now that they're using non-lead. So I feel very hopeful about it. I think that you know, hunters are conservationists too. They want to go out and hunt. They want to see animals in the wild. So I think it is decreasing. And it still is the leading cause of death. In California, I hope the avian flu doesn't become the leading cause of death. But right now, it it still is the leading cause of death of all the necropsies that have been done over the last 40 years. Question? Bitter Creek is on Hudson Ranch Road, just south of Carrizo National Monument, Carrizo Plains National Monument, near Vendacoba.
The easiest way to get there is like to drive the 5 to Brayford Park and turn left. And you go for about 30 miles.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been to Wind Wolves Preserve. It's not far from there. Google it. Yes.
Talk a little bit about your story and what inspired you to become the conservationist.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I had a friend that worked at the LA Zoo, and she told me about the condors, and she's a vet, and she had a chance to work on condors who had microtrash, and successfully they were returned. And she inspired me to become a volunteer in 2008. And I also did the California Naturalist. I completed the California Naturalist program, and I'm a wildlife tracker. I have a certification for level 3. Once you see a California condor in the wild and they fly by you, it's like an ultralight. It's amazing. They're just cool birds. I think they're amazing. I don't know why. They really impress me. I think they're majestic. And I think it's sad, honestly, that there used to be thousands and millions of them probably. If you go to La Brea tar pits, condor skeletons hanging from the ceiling, they were all over the place. And then there were only 22. I just think it's sad that we did that. And I want to be part of the solution. Yes.
I just want to say that I'm part of the guided tours. You can go on the website and get on the list, and I went on one. I think it must have been pre-COVID, but at any rate, we went all the way up. Very fun. And one of the highlights, besides seeing the condors fly, we looked out the silhouette and starlight behind them. Besides seeing them, we went into the ranger station and looked at the computer monitor, and those the cameras were inside the nest. And we got to watch what was going on in the nest. It was really
Okay, so we have a testament about how cool the Hopper Mountain National Wildlife Refuge tour was. And there are cameras in a lot of the nests. In the past, the Cornell Institute has shown one of our video cameras, so you could watch a condor cam on the online, but they do monitor a lot of nests because there aren't enough people to go out and monitor every nest, and some of them are very difficult to get to. They have cameras and they have monitors set up at the station, and you can see the condors in the nest. It's very cool. But hopefully we'll have another one this year on the Cornell Institute page as well.
One is, what's happening in the race in California flock? I know it's introducing me, so forth. Just the reproductive rate of is it growing or falling or whatever? The second thing is, are they vaccinating the birds against flu and
That's a very good question. Okay, so question about the reproductive rates, and then also about the avian flu vaccination. If you follow us on Instagram, I just posted something yesterday. The vaccinations have been approved for the California Condor. There is a vaccination for avian flu that has been approved for domestic, like poultry. Why they don't use it and they'd rather cull the birds, I don't know. But we don't want to initially give it to the California Condors. So there is a North Carolina turkey vulture flock who have volunteered to be a pilot study for the vaccination. And they're going to be given the vaccination, and they're going to watch if there's any negative effects from the vaccination. And then the goal is to start giving vaccinations to captive birds. And that way they could be monitored, because we don't want an endangered species to have a problem with the vaccination. In terms of the reproductive rate, there have been issues. Last year, we had many nest failures. In years past, there's still DDT, eggshell thinning in the central flock. Those birds eat walrus and whales. I guess we don't have walrus here. Sea lions and seals, and they have in their blubber DDT. So that still happens in central flock. In our flock, we have had some eggs that aren't viable, and we don't know why. In the past, they used to enter the nest, candle the egg. If it wasn't viable, they would replace it. On the table back there, there's an egg that's weighted. So they would use one of those and they would put it in the nest. And then when a pipping egg came up at the LA Zoo, they would bring that out and replace the egg. And then the parent bird would like, oh, this is my chick. But they don't do that anymore. And I understand why. There is a greater probability of condors surviving if they are released when they're a year and a half than if they are put in a wild nest and as a chick. So the failure of a nest in the wild is much higher than an adult bird being released. So I think we're going to do more monitoring. There's more cameras in nests. I know when at one point we were monitoring nests on a regular basis, like 10 years ago, the survival rate of the nest was 65%. Last year, it was less than 10%. So we don't know why. If they find an egg that's in a nest, they do study it to find out why it failed. Sometimes they enter a nest and there's just eggshells. We don't know if a raven came in, if there was predation of some sort. We don't know. So that's why we're trying. The Friends of the Condors just bought 6 cameras. $2,000 were given to this project so that we could have more nests monitored so we could see what's going on.
A quick follow-up about the vaccination program. How long is that whole process going to take? How long are you going to first do vultures in the Carolinas? Then how long is it going to take to test?
So the question is, how long is the vaccination program going to last or going to take to be implemented? And that's a very good question because they just got it approved yesterday. So there are still, I know, but suppose there's a negative effect. So I don't know, these really brave turkey vultures are going to be our pilot study. And I don't know how many weeks they're going to study them. And then it will go to captive birds. And then they will start capturing wild birds. If everything goes well, but I don't know the time frame yet. It's not been decided.
So if it does work, they are going to vaccinate wild birds prophylactically, not going to wait till an outbreak happens.
Yes, I mean they do that now for West Nile virus. Yeah.
So I'm curious about the breeding, the terrible success rate past year, but is there at least a silver lining in the condors live to be 50 or 60 years old? Do they keep breeding all that time?
So the question is, the condors keep breeding because they live to 50, 60 years old? And the answer is yes. Topa Topa is 57. And if you look, okay, a great website is Condor Spotter. And so you can look up wild birds there and they'll give you the lineage. On our website, we do have the stud book list. Topa Topa is stud book number 1. So you could see him on the stud book list. I'm trying to think how many birds he has sired. It's 30 more than that. So yeah, and he's still active. So yeah.
I was just gonna comment, I recently read from the Terror Fund, they said that they've seen known cases of avian influenza since April 11th. So it doesn't mean everybody's out of the woods, but they have like 4 birds that are currently recovered, I think it's really well in Arizona. So, you know, that's the good news part of it. The other thing I was going to comment is that it may be, I work with birds a lot, like what we see, these influenza outbreaks are during migration season.
Yes.
When things are coming up or down flyways, that's when we get the big eruptions. So hopefully summer will give us some time for the vaccination study to occur and you know, have a little bit of a wall there.
No, I totally agree with you. The avian flu is definitely related to the migration patterns. The current version of the avian flu, it has been studied from the migration from South America and Central American birds. There were 20 birds that died of avian flu in the Arizona flock. There were 6 birds that did not die that were being treated. I don't know what kind of medication they give them other than some sort of, if they're dehydrated, supportive care. Yeah, I mean, they'll give them a saline solution or whatever. Exactly. So they're being monitored, and those birds appeared to have survived, which is very hopeful. I totally agree with you there. And hopefully, my husband and I were talking, and he's a nurse, so he was like, well, maybe they'll study them and see if they've gotten some kind of immunity or some sort of, so hopefully they'll check to see if there's some sort of things that they can learn from the ones that survived. Yeah.
We have, I think, one final question from someone watching us on Zoom. Sarah wants to know, is the Vermilion Marble Canyon, Arizona area part of the release program?
Yeah, that's where they release the birds. The Vermilion Cliffs in the Grand Canyon. Mhm.
Okay.
One question that I've always had. Have any birds that were hatched in the wild, whether it was like an egg that was taken out and put in a nest, now gone on to breed successfully in the wild themselves? Do you know?
Yes, there are many that have birds that were born in the wild have now started having their own birds, chicks in the wild. I can't tell you the exact number, but yes, it's happened. Yes, they have grown up and they've become parent birds themselves. Yes.
And actually, just on the back of that, do you know roughly, like, how old now is the oldest wild born?
Oh, good. Yeah, I told you Topa Topa is at the LA Zoo. AC 4 is 43 years old, and he's in the Southern California flock. His stud book number is 20. And he's on, if you look up Condor Spotter and just say SoCal flock, all birds, number 20 is AC4. Yeah.
Well, you really know these guys. Okay, there's no other question. I'd just like to say thank you so much for and as I said, for those of us here in the room, there's materials in the back. You can take a look at it. if you haven't seen a California Condor, please go do it. They'll tell you where to go. I went up to Phoenix this last weekend, and it's not as far drive as you think it is from here. And saw a California Condor, and it's astonishing. It's absolutely something everyone should do. With that, Luke, would you like to,
Yeah. Just thanks again from.
Oh, sure.
from
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk about my favorite bird.
Yeah. And I too would highly recommend going to see California Condors, but I'm going to recommend somewhere a little bit closer because I went to Bitter Creek actually last weekend and then was at Val Vista Campground, and about midday, a pair of them circled up kind of right next to the campground, right next to the road. So you can actually see them very easily from the road there. And the nice thing about it is the condors don't get active until pretty late in the day. So you don't have to like do these 7 o'clock starts like we do for a lot of our field trips. So yeah, it's a great experience. So yeah, go and see them and sign up for some trips and all that kind of thing. And there's one of the easiest ways to see them, maybe you'll agree, but you know, there's a sign at Bitter Creek which has a picture of a condor on just kind of a couple of, I don't know how many miles it is from the end of kind of like from the 33, 166.
Now has a duck on it. Oh, they took all the signs down, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has a standard sign now.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly. There's 2 signs, one at the beginning and one at the end. And the second one, there's a pull out, and that's where we have the kiosk in June.
Yeah. So
if you go to our website, friendsofcondors.org, it'll tell you when the kiosk starts up June 1st, the 1st and 3rd, and from June all the way to October, there'll be somebody there to talk to you about the condors. And we generally see them there. They fly by, they're curious, they see a group of people, and you know, we have birds in the plate pen, so they come by to see them. So that's a good place to see them. Yeah.
It's very hot.
It does get hot in August, for sure.
all right, anything else we need to cover before? Okay, well, thanks again for a great talk, really interesting, and thanks for everyone to coming tonight. Hopefully see you at Birds and Beers and the next meeting in June. All right, night.